When last we had left the battle, the Phoenix State's lines had come under relentless assault from the invaders, preempting their own diversionary attacks as part of Operation Gatecrasher. But now, even as those setbacks take place, Operation Gatecrasher proceeds on schedule. The ground above them trembled, knocking some clumps of dirt loose. It was probably from artillery strikes or some explosive in the battle above. But the crews, currently digging underneath, paid it no heed. Their concern lay with the tunnel before them. Weeks had passed as they had kept digging, making sure to fortify the tunnel as they progressed. Couldn't risk a cave-in trapping them underground. Fears had remained persistent that the enemy would discover their efforts, despite no such contact coming to light. That is, until they had finally reached their goal, and the next phase of the operation could proceed. Private Lionel Axon struggled for a few seconds to get the bike under control after the hard landing, but was able to stabilize it despite the battle going on around him. The gunner in the sidecar opened fire into the enemy ranks, bullets tearing into a trio of berserkers that attempted to rush them. The rest of the biker squad, totaling around 5 vehicles, kept pace with his own, trading fire with a battalion of gold-armored mercenaries. 2 of the mercenaries collapsed under a hail of machine gun fire, their surviving allies shooting plasma in an attempt to retaliate. But the bikers proved to be too fast, the bolts zipping through thin air where their targets once were. Though a couple lucky shots were able to hit a target, whether it be clipping a gunner in the shoulder or splashing across armor plating. The distraction Private Axon's unit provided proved quite effective as the mercs found themselves flanked by advanced elements of the 83rd Paw Division, Persian attack warriors firing concentrated volleys, many bullets pinging off armor plates, but some striking weak spots such as visors and exposed joints. A handful drop dead before the others are able to return fire, killing dozens of attack warriors in retaliation. But this left them once more vulnerable to the attacks of the biker squad. Lionel's vehicle being the first to divert course and charge back into the fray. He could see the mercs begin to panic as they tried to meet both attacks. But the confusion proved fatal as the rest of the battalion quickly dropped like bugs under the crossfire. But there was no time for celebration of this small victory. For as they all knew, there was still the larger battle to be fought. And sure enough, the private noticed a sheen in the distance, indicating the arrival of enemy reinforcement. A far stronger force, supported by warriors in intimidating black armor, one of which aimed its wrist-mounted weapon and fired, the shot striking a sidecar and tearing the bike and its unfortunate crew apart. Several attack warriors were also gunned down before return fire could be sent. But while the golden armored mercs fell easily enough, the black armor of their comrades wasn't even scratched. More cannons fired off, destroying another bike and sending a group of infantry flying into the air as a general retreat was called. They were going to need far better firepower to deal with these guys. Colonel Eli Vander felt the ground underneath him tremble from the thunder of the Siegebreaker's guns, the high-caliber shell obliterating one of the black-armored mercenaries they now identified as the Grinning Skulls. While that took place, A trio of skulls traded shots with a heavy machine gun team. Plumes of dirt were kicked up from stray shells, while bullets tore through the space between battle lines. Scores of soldiers let loose with their rifles in an attempt to stifle the tide of flesh and armor heading their way, cutting down hundreds of grunts in the process. But the Skull mercenaries were proving to be a far greater threat. Their armor shrugging off all but the most powerful weapons they could use against them. The Siegebreaker mech was proving to be a valuable asset in this regard. Something the enemy realized as well, since fire was now being concentrated on the mech. 2 more mercenaries were brought down within the next few minutes, but the mech could not endure the full extent of the barrage, as the now riddled and broken chassis collapsed. This was not good. They now lost their best means of countering the Skull's assault. But if they retreated, the entire army would be at risk of collapse. So the colonel came to the conclusion that there was only one option left. "Fix bayonets! Be ready for blood!" Moments later, a roar was unleashed as the troops rushed out of their trenches and into no man's land. This near-suicidal charge seemed to have caught the mercenaries off guard, since their fire fell silent in the wake of this counterattack. All the better for them, as the distance was closed. As expected, the blades did little to pierce the armor of the Skull mercenaries, but the shock of the attack left them frozen with uncertainty, allowing the Phoenix State troops to rush over them with impunity. Some even discovering a critical weakness in the power armor, as shooting the coils at point-blank range seemed to cause an immediate shutdown, rendering the Skulls unable to continue the fight. However, this engagement was not entirely one-sided, as many grunts were able to join the fight in support of their comrades, killing dozens of Phoenix soldiers in the process. But as the fight devolved into a disorganized brawl, as the dead continued to pile up on both sides, the ground suddenly exploded.